That was Michael Anthony, okay? 100% dedicated, never did anything to hurt those guys, and they try to hurt him again and again and again.
You might think of Van Halen as a band defined by its explosive riffs, wild stage antics, and headline-making feuds. But behind all of that was one man who held it all together, quietly, powerfully, and with more sacrifice than fans ever knew. Michael Anthony was the anchor. His journey wasn't just about bass lines and backing vocals. It was about loyalty tested, credits lost, and a betrayal he discovered not with a phone call, but on the internet. This is the untold chapter of rock history that reveals how Anthony's low-end rhythm carried the band, even when the spotlight never turned his way. One moment, in particular, changed everything, and it didn't happen on stage. Brace yourself, because this story might completely rewrite your view of Van Halen growing up. Michael Anthony's life was shaped by a deep connection to music, inspired by his father, Walter Sobolewski, a trumpet player. Young Michael would often hear his father practicing and performing, which laid the foundation for his own curiosity about music. He started by learning the trumpet, but by age 13, his interests shifted to rock. He committed to the bass guitar, wanting to be different from his friends, who mostly played drums or guitar. A friend lent him a Fender Mustang guitar, which he cleverly modified into a 4-string bass by removing 2 strings. Recognizing his son's dedication, his father bought him a proper bass and amplifier, allowing him to seriously hone his skills. Anthony was influenced by legendary bassists like Jack Bruce of Cream and John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin. Despite being naturally left-handed, he learned to play with his right hand, a testament to his flexibility and commitment. These early influences and consistent practice gave him a strong technical foundation that would become essential during the Van Halen era in the early 1970s. Anthony immersed himself in the Southern California music scene, performing with several local bands before joining Snake, a power trio where he played bass and sang lead vocals. Snake frequently played school dances and local clubs, giving Anthony a platform to develop his performance skills. It was during this time that Snake crossed paths with another up-and-coming band called Mammoth, featuring brothers Eddie and Alex Van Halen. On one occasion, when Mammoth's PA system malfunctioned, Anthony generously offered them his band's equipment. This professional gesture left a lasting impression. Shortly after, Mammoth's bassist, Mark Stone, left the group, and the Van Halen brothers remembered Anthony. They invited him to a jam session, and his energetic bass style and powerful backing vocals were exactly what they were looking for. Impressed by the musical chemistry, they quickly inducted him into the band. Not long after, they changed their name to Van Halen, with David Lee Roth on vocals, Eddie on guitar, Alex on drums, and Michael on bass. The classic lineup was officially in place, launching Anthony into an international career that would change his life. With the classic Van Halen lineup solidified in the mid-1970s, Anthony quickly proved to be a vital part of the band's identity. His high-pitched backing vocals became a signature of the Van Halen sound, and his tight bass playing anchored Eddie's explosive guitar work and Alex's thunderous drumming. When their debut album dropped in 1978, his contributions were on full display. His steady bass lines provided the rhythmic foundation for tracks like Runnin' with the Devil, and his vocals elevated anthems like Jamie's Crying. As the band rose to fame, Anthony earned a reputation for being dependable and low maintenance. Initially, he was an equal partner, sharing in profits and business decisions. However, as the band's popularity grew and internal power struggles developed, the financial arrangements began to tilt. According to their former manager, Noel Monk, Anthony's share of income and ownership rights was altered. Still, Anthony remained loyal to the music and the band, continuing to tour and record with them through a series of multi-platinum successes. His steady, professional playing and vocal support were instrumental in shaping the band's live performances and recordings, solidifying his role as an important pillar of one of rock's most explosive acts. By 1984, Van Halen had become one of the biggest bands in the world, thanks to their career-defining album 1984. But behind the scenes, tensions were escalating. According to Noel Monk, it was during the 1984 tour that Anthony was pressured by the other three members, Alex and David Lee Roth, signing away all future songwriting credits and royalties. Monk's memoir, Runnin' with the Devil, revealed that Anthony was presented with the agreement backstage just hours before a concert, with his bandmates standing over him. The contract was retroactive, meaning Anthony also forfeited credit and revenue from the 1984 album. This moment marked a pivotal power shift, turning Anthony from an equal partner into a contracted performer with no stake in the band's intellectual property. By signing away his rights, he lost out on millions in future earnings from album sales and reissues. Anthony, however, kept his professionalism, refraining from publicly criticizing his bandmates for years. He later admitted in interviews that he signed the documents under duress to avoid confrontation and keep the band together, saying that all he ever wanted was to play music. In the years following the band's commercial peak, Anthony began to experience a noticeable shift in how his contributions were publicly recognized, particularly by Eddie Van Halen. Eddie started diminishing Anthony's role in interviews, making comments that implied he lacked musical skill. In a 2015 interview with Billboard, Eddie claimed he had to show Anthony how to play every note. These comments were met with backlash from fans and musicians who saw them as unfair and historically inaccurate. Anthony responded in interviews, stating that the claims were unfounded and that he had always learned the material on his own. He admitted the comments were hurtful, especially coming from someone he had considered a close collaborator for decades. The public remarks also cast a shadow on his professional image. Anthony never started a public quarrel, but he did acknowledge that the widening gap between him and Eddie contributed to the breakdown of their bond. By the mid-2000s, their communication had all but ceased, and Anthony was quietly pushed out of the band's core operations. After Eddie's death in 2020, Anthony expressed regret that they were never able to mend their relationship, a poignant example of how creative partnerships can be complicated by ego and unresolved conflict. By the late 1990s, Anthony's presence in Van Halen had begun to fade in subtle but meaningful ways. On the 1998 album Van Halen 3, he played bass on only 3 of the 11 tracks, with Eddie handling the rest. His diminished studio participation signaled a shift in the band's internal dynamic. In 2004, when the band released the compilation album The Best of Both Worlds, Anthony did not perform on any of the 3 new songs, only contributing backing vocals. The final straw came in 2006, when Anthony learned of his replacement Teddy's teenage son Wolfgang Van Halen not through a phone call, but through news he read online. This was the ultimate betrayal for Anthony, who felt blindsided and hurt that, after decades of loyalty and contribution, he was simply erased from the band he had helped build. Following his departure, Anthony reconnected with former Van Halen frontman Sammy Hagar. Their musical chemistry, forged during the Van Hagar era, led to several successful collaborations. In 2005, they launched a touring act called The Other Half, which performed Van Halen hits to enthusiastic fans. The name was a cheeky nod to their roles as the often overlooked halves of the band. Anthony and Hagar also joined forces in the short-lived supergroup Planet Us, and later, the wildly successful Chickenfoot, which also featured guitar virtuoso Joe Satriani and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Drummer Chad Smith, their self-titled debut in 2009, was a critical and commercial success, proving that Anthony had plenty of creative fuel left in the tank. In 2014, Anthony and Hagar teamed up again to form The Circle, which included Jason Bonham, son of the legendary Led Zeppelin drummer. The band has released original music and continues to tour, showcasing Anthony's continued relevance and his enduring love for rock music. His collaborations with Hagar and others have shown that his legacy goes much deeper than his Van Halen stint following Eddie Van Halen's death in 2020. There was renewed interest in a tribute tour. According to Joe Satriani, serious discussions were underway with Alex Van Halen, Michael Anthony, and David Lee Roth. However, the plans unraveled due to internal disagreements. David Lee Roth reportedly resisted a format that would overtly honor Eddie's memory. The emotional weight of such a tribute, combined with unresolved issues among the members, made coordination difficult. Alex Van Halen's health also became an issue as he suffered a back injury that made a physically demanding tour unlikely. Anthony later confirmed he had been contacted and was interested, but the emotional and logistical barriers were too great to overcome. The canceled tour exemplified just how badly torn the Van Halen family was. Anthony was denied an opportunity for final closure, and fans were disappointed by the deferred plans that marked the end of any realistic possibility for a full circle moment. Valerie Bertinelli, actress and ex-wife of Eddie, has also publicly opposed any biopic about the band. She explicitly told her son Wolfgang to make sure I'm dead before allowing such a film to happen. Her reasoning is rooted in a desire to protect the integrity of Eddie's memory and avoid any dramatized version of his complex life and struggles with addiction. She believes Hollywood might distort key aspects of his personality, and watching those moments fictionalized on screen would be emotionally overwhelming for her and the family. Wolfgang Van Halen has echoed his mother's sentiments, advocating for honoring his father through authenticity and respect rather than through fan service or public spectacles. He has stated that any decision about posthumous releases would be handled with care and with the family's blessing. For now, he's focused on his own musical path with Mammoth WVH, where he writes, records, and performs everything himself. It's clear that he will ensure any future endeavors are undertaken on the terms of musical greatness and emotional frankness.